Everyone thought it was just another quiet morning. But when I walked down to the lake with my tackle box, I saw something that made my chest tighten and my knees go weak. Fish, dozens of them, floating belly up, silver scales flashing like broken mirrors in the early sun. The water wasn't calm or clear. It was sick. Streaks of blue swirled across the surface like someone had poured paint into it, and the smell, sharp, chemical, choking, burned the back of my throat. They poisoned it, my lake, my sanctuary. For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. 3 years I'd come down here at sunrise, watching the light spread across the ripples, feeling peace in every cast of my line. My father had taught me on waters just like this. A healthy lake is alive, son. If the fish die, something is terribly wrong. His words echoed in my head as I stood on the shore, staring at the devastation. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. At 40, I thought I'd seen every dirty trick in the book, but this was war. Someone wanted to send a message, and as I traced the chemical streaks back to the eastern shore where the concentration was heaviest, the message became clearer. Someone had dumped poison here, not just to kill the fish, but to silence me. My name is Logan Reed, fishing guide, freshwater conservation specialist. I don't just love water, I live for it, I protect it. And now, standing in the stink of chemicals and death, I realized someone wanted me gone. But here's the twist they didn't count on. The same water they poisoned to stop me is the same water that flows into every pipe, every faucet, every family kitchen in this neighborhood. They thought they were targeting me, but they were poisoning themselves. I felt my stomach churn. Who would do this? Who even had access to industrial-grade chemicals like copper sulfate, strong enough to kill off an ecosystem overnight? And why would they risk destroying the very lifeline of our community? That's when I saw it, a slip of paper taped to my front door, my name printed in bold, an HOA violation notice, $150 fine, accusation, environmental damage to shared water. The notice was dated the day before I found the fish floating. My blood ran cold. How could they accuse me of damage that hadn't even happened yet? Unless they knew it was coming, unless they planned it. The signature at the bottom read, Gloria Whitmore, HOA President. Gloria, polished, sharp, always dressed like she was selling a house even when she was walking her dog. She knew the HOA handbook better than anyone, and she knew the rules, written warning, 30 days to correct, right to a hearing, then a fine. But she skipped all of it, straight to punishment. This wasn't about rules, this was personal. And as I was piecing that together, I heard the click of heels on pavement behind me. Gloria herself, carrying her leather portfolio like a weapon. Her smile was tight, rehearsed, the kind that promised everything and delivered nothing. Maybe if you didn't spend all day fishing, our water wouldn't look like a disaster zone, she said smoothly. I stared at her, then at the poison pond behind me. You think my fishing did this? Gloria, I practice catch and release. I've been doing conservation work for 15 years. She shrugged, her eyes glinting with false innocence. All I know is, we never had problems before you treated our pond like your personal fishing hole. Her words made my blood pressure spike. She wasn't just accusing me, she was setting me up. And then she slipped, just for a second. Besides, she said, adjusting her pearl necklace, this pond won't be our concern much longer. Big changes are coming, changes that will improve our property values. My heart skipped, the way she said it calculated, smug, final, what changes? That's when I noticed them. Large pipes half buried in the soil running from the pond toward the neighborhood. Fresh dirt mounded near the water's edge. Construction. Something was happening here, something bigger than fishing, bigger than me. And as Gloria walked away, heels clicking like the countdown of a clock, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just about a pond. It was about power, money, and control. But she made one mistake. She thought I would walk away. And she had no idea the truth about this water would drown her before it drowned me. Everyone in the neighborhood got the same text that afternoon. Emergency HOA meeting. Attendance mandatory, no explanation, no agenda, just urgency. It didn't feel like community business. It felt like a trap. I walked into the community center with 30 pairs of eyes burning into me, whispering, starring, mothers clutching their kids closer. Neighbors I'd picked up trash for now looking at me like I was radioactive. At the podium stood Gloria Whitmore. Navy power suit, pearls gleaming under the fluorescent lights, posture like a general before battle. She shuffled her papers, projecting control. but her eyes, sharp, scanning, gave her away. She was hunting. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice dripping with false authority. "We're here tonight to discuss ongoing environmental damage to our shared water system." She didn't say my name. She didn't need to. Every head turned toward me anyway. "One resident," she continued, pausing for dramatic effect, "has repeatedly violated property usage guidelines, creating a health hazard for our entire community." The accusation slammed into me like a physical blow. My chest tightened. She was painting me as the villain. Then she twisted the knife. "We also have reason to believe this individual deliberately sabotaged our water quality to avoid responsibility for his fishing activities." The words hung heavy in the air. Sabotage, deliberate, criminal. My neighbors gasped. Some looked angry, some confused, some almost convinced. I gripped the back of a folding chair to steady myself. She was rewriting reality, turning my conservation work into an attack, and the worst part, people were buying it. Then Gloria held up a document, crisp white paper, her trap. "I'm asking Mr. Reed to sign this pledge tonight, in front of all of you, promising to never fish in our shared water again." The room went silent, every eye locked on me. My hands curled into fists. But this wasn't just about fishing. I could see the fine print from where I stood. 3 paragraphs buried in legal language, clauses about environmental impact, future development opportunities, forfeiting rights to contest permits. This wasn't a pledge. It was a weapon. If I signed, I wasn't just giving up fishing. I was signing away my right to fight whatever she had planned for this pond. I rose slowly. My voice shook, but I forced steel into it. "According to our bylaws, fishing restrictions require environmental study and a community vote. You can't just ban me with a piece of paper." Gloria's smile turned cold, mask slipping. "I'm the president of this board, Mr. Reed. I decide what's best for our property values. And frankly, your little hobby is standing in the way of very important improvements." The word improvements landed like a threat. That's when she leaned too close to her assistant, whispering in what she thought was a private voice. But I heard every word. "Make sure the development paperwork is ready by Friday. We need contamination documentation for the city permits." My blood went cold. Development permits, contamination documentation. This wasn't about me. This was about a deal, a project, money. And she was willing to poison her own community's water to make it happen. The meeting spiraled into chaos. Some residents demanded answers. Others asked about property values, about construction timelines. And then I realized Gloria had already been whispering in their ears. She'd been planting seeds long before today, building her support, turning them against me. But not everyone was fooled. Paul Harris, my neighbor from 3 houses down, stood up. Former board member, a man who'd quit months ago because he couldn't stand Gloria's style of leadership. His voice was steady, cutting through the noise. "I think we need independent water testing before making any decisions." A few heads nodded, finally a crack in her armor. Gloria's face darkened, her mask slipping again. "Mr. Harris, your opinion is no longer relevant to this board." The venom in her tone shocked even her supporters. The room erupted. Arguments, accusations, tension so thick you could taste it. I sat in the back, heart pounding, watching it all unfold. She thought she'd humiliated me. She thought she'd buried me under suspicion. But in her arrogance, she'd revealed the truth. This wasn't about fish. It wasn't about me. This was about greed, development, a conspiracy that reached deeper than anyone realized. And as I left that meeting, one thought echoed louder than the chaos behind me. If she was willing to poison the pond for money, what else was she willing to destroy? The morning after that disastrous meeting, my phone rang before the sun was even up. "Logan, it's Paul," the voice on the other end whispered. "We need to talk today, City Hall. Don't tell anyone where you're going." His tone was tight, urgent, the kind that makes your stomach clench. By afternoon, I found myself walking into the municipal records office with him. The air inside smelled like dust and old paper, but what Paul laid out on the steel table hit me harder than any chemical stench at the pond. Blueprints, maps, colored lines tracing beneath our neighborhood like veins under skin. "Look here," Paul said, his finger sliding across the paper. "This is the main line." He traced from the pond, our pond, straight into a box marked water treatment facility. then branching lines stretching like spider legs into every house in the development. My throat went dry. "Paul, are you saying what I think you're saying?" He looked up, eyes grim. "Every faucet, every sink, every glass of water we drink, it all starts at that pond, if someone poisoned it." I finished the thought for him, my voice low, heavy. "They poisoned us." Silence settled over the table, the kind of silence where the truth hits so hard it steals the air. It wasn't just fish. It wasn't just my fishing rights. Gloria's scheme had put the entire neighborhood at risk, her own children included. I stared at the maps, the colored lines bleeding into my vision. What kind of greed blinds a person enough to poison their own water supply? To endanger families, children, neighbors, all for $1 and a promise of improved property values. Paul leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "And it gets worse. I think she's not acting alone. Developers, permits, there's pressure coming from outside the HOA. The contamination isn't an accident, it's evidence, manufactured to fit their timeline." My pulse spiked. Evidence they weren't just poisoning us, they were staging a show. The floating fish, the blue streaks, the stench, all of it carefully designed for impact, something that would look convincing in a report. I clenched my fists against the cold metal table. So they poison us to get permits. Then they sell our homes as prime lakeside real estate once they drain or develop the pond. That's their plan. Paul's jaw tightened. "It's bigger than fishing, Logan. This is fraud, corruption, and it's endangering every life in this neighborhood." I looked at him, realizing something I hadn't dared to admit until now. I couldn't fight this alone. And maybe that's why Paul had called me. He'd already seen how far Gloria was willing to go. He knew this wasn't just neighbor drama anymore. This was a conspiracy. But as heavy as the moment was, a darker thought gnawed at me. If Gloria was willing to break the rules so openly, skip procedures, falsify violations, what else was she hiding? What else had she already set in motion? As I rolled the map back into its case, Paul's hand caught mine. His grip was firm, urgent. "Logan, be careful. She has more allies than you realize. I've heard whispers, contractors, even city officials. She's not afraid to smear people. If she feels cornered, she'll come after you harder." I nodded, but my chest felt heavy. It wasn't just about exposing her anymore. It was about surviving her retaliation long enough to do it. Walking out of City Hall, the late afternoon sun felt colder than morning frost. The world looked the same. Families walking dogs, kids riding bikes, sprinklers hissing on manicured lawns. But all I could see were the invisible blue lines from that map, carrying poison into every glass of water, every morning coffee, every baby's bottle in the neighborhood. And the terrifying part? Nobody knew, not yet. As I stood there, the weight of it pressing down, I made a quiet promise to myself. If Gloria thought this was just about fishing, she was wrong. If she thought her threats, her fines, her lies could push me out, she underestimated the one thing stronger than her greed. The truth. And the truth was about to surface, no matter how deep she tried to bury it. Some truths are too big to leave buried, and some risks you just have to take. That night, I couldn't sit still. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those maps from City Hall, blue lines carrying poison from the pond into every home. My own faucet water had started tasting metallic, sharp in a way I couldn't ignore. I swirled the cup of coffee in my hand, watching the faint shimmer of contamination cling to the surface. Enough was enough. If Gloria was hiding proof of what she'd done, it would be in one place, the HOA office, and I knew exactly when to go. Midnight. When the night guard was on his laziest round, when the building lights clicked off, when silence swallowed the neighborhood whole. I slipped out, keeping to the shadows, every crunch of gravel under my boots sounding like a gunshot. The community center loomed ahead, dark and empty except for a faint glow from the basement. The door on the side, emergency access, was always loose. A quick swipe of a credit card and I was inside. The basement smelled of dust, cleaning supplies, and something else. Power. The kind of power that hides in folders and signatures, the kind that can ruin lives without ever raising a voice. Her office door gave way too easily. That was the first sign of arrogance. Gloria believed she was untouchable. Papers were stacked across her desk like abandoned trophies. Permits, applications, letters on corporate letterhead with one name that kept reappearing, Lakeside Development Corporation. My eyes moved across the words like I was piecing together a nightmare. Luxury resort, environmental impact documentation, contamination evidence required. It hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about discrediting me. This was a carefully orchestrated plan months in the making. The fish kill, the blue streaks, the stage disaster. It wasn't sloppy sabotage. It was business. Then I saw it, the email printouts. One line froze my blood. Advance payment, $50,000 upon delivery of contamination evidence. $50,000. That was the price of our water, the price of our health, the price of our trust. I felt my jaw tighten until my teeth ached. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd betrayed every child who swam in that pond, every family that drank from their kitchen faucet without fear, every parent who trusted that the water filling their baby's bottle was safe. And for what? A paycheck. I pulled out my phone, snapping photos of everything, every email, every permit, every damning line of text. My hands were shaking so badly the pictures blurred, but I didn't care. Proof was proof. Then footsteps. I froze, heavy, deliberate, echoing through the concrete hallway, the night guard. My pulse thundered in my ears. I shoved the papers back exactly where I'd found them, heart racing. The sound grew closer, keys jingling. A flashlight beam cut across the crack beneath the door. I held my breath, every muscle tense, praying the pounding in my chest wouldn't give me away. The knob rattled once, twice, then silence. I counted to 10, then 20, the footsteps moved past. I slipped out the emergency exit, adrenaline burning like fire in my veins. By the time my boots hit the grass outside, I was drenched in sweat, my phone heavy in my pocket with stolen truth. I should have felt victorious, but all I felt was dread. Because now I knew exactly what Gloria was doing, and I knew exactly how far she'd already gone. She hadn't just bent the rules. She hadn't just framed me. She had sold out our community for cash. She had poisoned us deliberately, documenting the damage like it was just paperwork for a permit. And worst of all, she wasn't done. The accelerated timeline, the frantic whispers to her assistant, the pipes by the shore. Something told me this nightmare was only just beginning. The morning after my midnight break-in, I thought the worst was behind me. I had the proof, the photos, the emails, the permits, Gloria's lies in black and white. But when I opened my front door, the law was waiting for me. A sheriff's deputy stood there, papers in hand, eyes flat with the weight of official business. Logan Reed. I nodded, throat dry. You've been served. I scanned the documents with trembling hands. Harassment, illegal surveillance, trespassing on HOA property. Damages $5,000, restraining order, keep away from the pond. Gloria had flipped the script. My midnight investigation, my desperate attempt to protect the truth was being painted as criminal. And the worst part, on paper it looked like she was right. By the time the deputy walked away, the weight of the papers in my hands felt heavier than stone. I called Jake, my old friend and water safety colleague. He skimmed the documents over the phone, his voice grim. She's abusing her authority, Logan, but fighting this will take time. Money, lawyers. She's betting you'll drown in the legal process before you ever get to the truth. My chest tightened. She wasn't just poisoning our water. She was poisoning my reputation. And it was working. That afternoon, I walked past Mrs. Chen's house, the same neighbor whose grandkids used to wave to me while I fished. She hurried them inside the moment she saw me, not even looking me in the eye. Another family, the one whose kids loved feeding the ducks at the pond, crossed the street to avoid me. I was becoming the outcast, the villain, the paranoid neighbor who poisoned the water and then blamed everyone else. It hurt worse than the lawsuit. That night, standing at my kitchen sink, I filled a glass of water, trying to wash the bitterness from my throat. But the moment it hit my tongue, I froze. It tasted wrong, metallic, bitter in a way that clung to my mouth long after I swallowed. Panic surged through me. I spat it out, staring at the glass like it was poison, because maybe it was. Paul's words from City Hall echoed in my head. Every house in the development gets water from the pond. If the contamination was moving through the system, then we weren't just talking about dead fish anymore. We were talking about families, children, bobbies, drinking poison day after day, not even knowing it. I set the glass down, hands shaking so badly it rattled against the counter. My stomach turned at the thought of what I might have already swallowed. The next day, things got worse. Paul called to say neighbors were starting to whisper about him, too. "They're saying I'm defending you for money, that I'm taking bribes." His voice was heavy, weary. Guilt clawed at me. My fight was dragging down the only ally I had left. And then came the whispers I wasn't supposed to hear. Walking past two neighbors chatting in hushed tones near their mailboxes, I caught fragments that made my blood run cold. Gloria says big changes are coming, modernization, improved property values. About time, that old pond's been an eyesore for years. I realized with horror what she was doing. While I scrambled for evidence, she was running a campaign, selling the contamination as progress, convincing residents that poisoning their own water wasn't a crime, it was an upgrade. She was winning hearts while I was losing mine. That evening, desperate for proof, I set up near the pond with my phone, hoping to catch whoever was still tampering with the water. Two shadowy figures appeared near the eastern shore. My heart pounded. I had them. Finally. I hit record. 30 seconds of shaky footage before my phone battery died with a sharp, mocking beep. I cursed under my breath, stumbling forward in the dark, trying to get closer. My foot caught a root. I fell hard, snapping branches, making enough noise to wake the dead. The flashlight swung toward me. Car doors slammed. Engines roared to life. And just like that, they were gone. All I had was 30 seconds of blurry silhouettes and a dead battery. No proof, no names, nothing. I sat there by the poison pond, dirt on my clothes, anger in my chest, defeat in my bones. Everyone was against me. My neighbors, the law, even the water I drank turned against me. For the first time, I asked myself if I should just leave, pack up, start fresh somewhere without HOA politics and poison lakes, somewhere I wasn't the villain. But then I looked at the black water under the moonlight, streaked with chemical blue, reflecting a face I barely recognized anymore. And I knew one thing. If I walked away now, Gloria won. And maybe the whole neighborhood lost. The knock on my door came just after sunrise, not the sharp official knock of law enforcement, softer, uneasy. When I opened it, Paul stood there, hair disheveled, eyes shadowed from lack of sleep. He clutched a manila envelope to his chest like it might burn him. "Logan," he whispered, glancing over his shoulder. "We need to talk inside, away from windows." My stomach dropped. Whatever he had in that envelope, it was heavy enough to scare him. At my kitchen table, Paul spread out printed emails, his hands trembling as he slid them toward me. "I couldn't sleep after seeing those water maps," he said. "So I logged into my old board account, dug through archived correspondence." The first page made my blood freeze. Gloria's official HOA email, communicating directly with Lakeside Development Corporation. Not about community improvements, not about water safety, about contamination documentation. "Read the date," Paul urged. I scanned the header, 3 weeks before the fish kill. 3 weeks, she'd been coordinating with developers before the first dead fish surfaced, before she'd ever accused me. My heart pounded as I flipped to the next page. Payment received, $50,000 advance for comprehensive contamination evidence. I nearly dropped the paper, $50,000. Paul's voice was grim. She didn't just bend the rules, Logan. She sold the whole neighborhood, took developer money to manufacture a disaster. And the fish kill, it wasn't collateral damage, it was staged. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. Every fish floating belly up, every chemical streak across the water, it had all been theater. A performance designed to impress developers and city officials. And we weren't just collateral damage, we were pawns. Paul's hand shook as he pushed the final email across the table. "It gets worse." Detailed instructions from the developers themselves. Which chemicals to use. How much copper sulfate would kill fish dramatically without wiping out the vegetation. Notes about visual impact. They weren't just poisoning us, they were choreographing it. I sat back, the papers blurring through the heat in my eyes. Anger, betrayal, fury like I'd never known. "She didn't just come after me," I said quietly. "She endangered every family, every child, just to cash a check." Before Paul could respond, my phone rang. Unknown number. Against every instinct, I answered. Her voice slid through the speaker like ice. "Mr. Reed, I understand you've been asking questions that don't concern you." "Gloria." Her tone was calm, but the menace underneath was sharp enough to cut. "I'm offering you one final opportunity," she continued. "Sign the fishing restriction agreement and this unpleasantness ends. Refuse, and your life here will become much more complicated." I clenched the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. "What are you threatening me with, Gloria?" Her laugh was soft, cruel. "I don't threaten, Mr. Reed. I simply point out consequences, property values, reputation, legal standing, all of it can vanish. You don't want to be the man no one trusts, the man who loses everything." The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly, my pulse hammering in my ears. Paul's face was pale, his lips pressed tight. "She knows we're onto her. That means she's scared, but it also means she's dangerous. We need to move fast, Logan, before she buries us both." That afternoon, activity around the pond spiked. Trucks with no company logos. Workers installing equipment they refused to explain. Taking water samples, clipping wires into the soil. "Private contractors, HOA business," one of them muttered when I asked. Nothing more. It was clear Gloria was accelerating her plan, trying to beat us to the finish line. But Paul wasn't sitting idle. He'd already made copies of the emails and slipped them quietly to a handful of residents he trusted. Mrs. Chen, the family with young kids, even the paralegal down on Maple Street. "The truth spreads faster than lies if you give it oxygen," Paul told me, his voice firm despite the fear in his eyes. And he was right. For the first time, whispers in the neighborhood weren't about me. They were about her. People asking why Gloria had been holding secret meetings, why construction crews kept appearing without notice, why families were suddenly sick after drinking their own tap water. The tide was turning. But as I stood by the poisoned pond that night, staring at the faint glow of unmarked trucks under the moonlight, I knew one thing for certain. Gloria wasn't finished. And if she thought intimidation and lies would stop me, she had forgotten the most important truth. The truth always floats. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, but I couldn't shake the knot in my stomach. Today wasn't just about water. It was about truth, about survival. Paul and I set up folding tables by the pond, while Jake, my water safety friend, unloaded a van full of professional testing gear. Portable analyzers, sample jars, digital readouts that could project results in real time. This was no backyard science experiment. This was the kind of equipment the EPA used. By 10 o'clock, families began arriving with picnic baskets and lawn chairs, kids racing through the grass, their laughter masking the undercurrent of dread hanging in the air. Parents wanted answers. They wanted to know what they'd been pouring into their children's cups every night. But Gloria had arrived first. She stood near the entrance in a blinding white outfit, designer sunglasses gleaming, flanked by a small team of strangers. An information booth had been set up, draped in banners about property values and modernization. She smiled like a queen holding court. "We've brought independent consultants," she announced loudly, making sure every ear caught the words. "Unbiased experts who will ensure accurate results." The implication was clear. My testing was biased, hers was the truth. Then came the sabotage. One of her assistants strode up to Jake's station, flashing a badge. "Excuse me, sir, but we need to verify your certification for conducting environmental testing on municipal property. Liability concerns." Jake's jaw tightened, but he complied, forced to dig through paperwork while families watched. The delay was obvious. Gloria smirked, leaning against her booth like a cat watching mice scatter. I muttered under my breath, fists clenching, "This is harassment." But Paul was already filming everything, his camera steady, documenting the intimidation for everyone to see later. Finally, Jake's equipment was cleared and the first samples were drawn. Families gathered close, eyes fixed on the analyzers. Kids stopped playing. The air thickened with silence. 40 minutes in, preliminary numbers appeared on the screen. Jake frowned, his brows knitting. "Levels are elevated," he said cautiously, "but let me run confirmations before we announce anything." Gloria seized the hesitation like a weapon. "See, even the so-called experts can't give straight answers." Her consultants moved quickly, presenting their results first. "Our independent analysis confirms contamination," one man declared smoothly, "but evidence suggests this may have been exacerbated by unauthorized fishing activities." The crowd murmured. Suspicion flickered again, eyes darting toward me. My credibility wavered like smoke. Then Jake's voice cut through, steady and unshakable. With respect, that is false. Our EPA-certified testing shows copper sulfate levels 15 times above safe standards for drinking water, along with elevated lead, mercury, none of which come from fishing. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Mothers instinctively pulled children closer. Mrs. Chen's voice cracked as she stepped forward, trembling. My daughter, been sick all week. Stomach pain, headaches. We've been drinking this water every day. Her words struck like lightning. Other parents began connecting dots, mysterious illnesses, rashes, fevers. The air buzzed with fear. Gloria's consultant tried again. Seasonal variations, testing errors. But Jake silenced him with the final blow. These chemicals are industrial grade, only accessible to licensed water management companies. This was deliberate. Someone with professional access poisoned your water. The crowd erupted. And that's when Paul stepped forward, voice steady, holding the stack of printed emails. He raised them high for everyone to see. Here's your proof. Gloria took $50,000 from developers to make sure our water looked contaminated. These are her emails, her signature, her deal with the corporation. The silence that followed was electric. Every face turned toward Gloria. Her confident mask faltered, cracking under the weight of truth. This is all fabricated, she snapped. Logan doctored those documents. He staged all of this. But the paralegal from Maple Street spoke up, voice sharp as a blade. These headers are authentic. They came from HOA servers. Taking money from developers while serving as president isn't just unethical, it's fraud, and possibly federal crime. Gloria's words sputtered and died. Her consultants packed their equipment quietly, slipping away before the mob turned on them too. The tide shifted in an instant. Neighbors who once avoided me now shouted for Gloria's resignation. Parents demanded accountability. Phones flashed as residents recorded everything, calling lawyers, dialing authorities. I stood there, heart pounding, as the truth finally surfaced for everyone to see. Gloria had poisoned her own neighborhood, and now there was no hiding it. The roar of voices still echoed across the pond when the dark SUVs pulled up. Doors swung open, and men and women in navy jackets stepped out, badges glinting in the afternoon sun. EPA. Agent Sarah Martinez moved to the front, her tone sharp, efficient. We've received multiple reports of deliberate water contamination affecting a municipal supply. This is now federal jurisdiction. Gloria's face drained of color. The woman who had strutted through meetings like a queen was suddenly cornered prey. Agent Martinez explained calmly, almost clinically. Deliberate poisoning of public water carries penalties up to 10 years in prison, $100,000 in fines, mandatory restitution. We'll be collecting samples and reviewing documentation. The words landed like hammer blows. Neighbors who had once whispered in fear now stood taller, fueled by righteous anger. Mrs. Chen passed around a tablet, collecting signatures for a class action suit. Parents crowded together, listing medical bills, demanding accountability. Gloria was finished, and she knew it. But her pride wouldn't let her bow out quietly. This is hysteria, she spat, stumbling toward the ornamental fountain that drew from the same poisoned system. The water is safe. You're being manipulated by a troublemaker who refuses responsibility. Before anyone could stop her, she cupped her hands, scooped up water, and drank. Gulp after gulp, defiant, desperate. The crowd gasped in horror. Within minutes, the poison she'd unleashed on all of us turned on her. Her face flushed red, then pale. She clutched her stomach, doubled over, collapsing at the fountain's edge. Paramedics rushed forward as children cried and neighbors recoiled. Poetic justice, karma, whatever name you give it, the symbolism was almost too sharp to bear. She had poisoned herself with her own crime. A mother whose child had been hospitalized stepped forward, her voice ice cold. Now you know what my little boy felt last week when he couldn't stop throwing up. No one defended Gloria, not anymore. She was rushed to the hospital, but the damage to her reputation was beyond repair. By nightfall, federal investigators had seized her records. By the end of the week, she was stripped of her position, charged with fraud, environmental crime, and breach of fiduciary duty. Her career was gone, her fortune gone. Even her house, once a monument to her power, would be sold to cover the cleanup costs. The neighborhood wasted no time voting Paul in as interim president. His first act? Implementing new bylaws, mandatory environmental impact studies for any future project, resident votes on major changes, and permanent protection for the pond. We weren't just fixing water, we were fixing trust. Cleanup crews arrived within 2 weeks, working day and night. They drained, filtered, and treated the pond, restoring balance drop by drop. The blue streaks faded. Life returned slowly, cautiously. The water still carried scars, but it was healing, just like us. Gloria eventually pled guilty to avoid trial. 2 years probation, $50,000 in fines, a lifetime ban from any HOA leadership. On paper, it didn't look like enough. But in truth, she'd lost far more than freedom or money. She'd lost everything she valued, her power, her image, her control. Sometimes the cruelest punishment isn't prison. It's watching everything you built collapse under the weight of your own greed. Weeks later, I stood by the pond again, casting my line into waters that shimmered with new life. Sunlight glinted off ripples, clear and clean. Families gathered nearby, kids feeding ducks, parents chatting freely. The fear had lifted. I thought about Gloria, about how far she was willing to go, about how greed had blinded her so completely she poisoned her own children's drinking water. And I thought about my father's words from years ago, a healthy water system is a living ecosystem. When life dies, something is very wrong. He was right, but he'd missed one thing. When truth dies, everything is wrong, and when truth comes back to the surface, nothing can stop it. I reeled in slowly, watching the line ripple across the restored pond. Peace washed over me, deeper than I'd felt in months. They tried to poison our water, our trust, our community. But the truth floated back, it always does. And in the end, the lies drowned with her. You've heard this confession, now wait until you hear the next one, the truth that shatters everything you thought you knew.